Barnacles is what you do when you don't really know what you do, but you want to trick yourself into thinking that you're productive. So you hit refresh on your email box 136 times a day, or you go check Twitter, or you go get on LinkedIn, or you go, oh, I think there was some YouTube videos that I needed to watch about time management, and then you burn the whole afternoon.
If you're looking for a way to be able to grow your company from 1 million to 10 million, if you're looking for a way to grow with less stress, if you're looking for a way to be able to get more off your plate so you can spend your time doing more work you love, more of the $5,000 hour work versus the $20 an hour work, you are going to love today's guest expert, Perry Marshall. And if you haven't heard of Perry, are you living under? No, I'm just kidding. But if you haven't heard of Perry, let me just give you a couple of snapshots as Perry and I've gotten to know each other over a period of time. Perry is called the most expensive or one of the most expensive consultants in the world by several publications. He's also the author of the definitive guide of 80/20 sales and marketing, which we're going to talk a lot about today. It's the definitive guide to working less and making more. I mean, would you like to do that as you're watching or listening right now? If you don't want to do that, might want to tune out. But if you do want to do that, especially in these uncertain times, where we've got, crazy conversations about inflation, we've got, the election, and, there's always ups and downs. And one of the things that Perry has going for him as well that we're going to dive into is how would you like to have your own planet named after you? We're going to talk about how that came about. You want to talk about unique positioning. He's one of the best people in the world at showing you how to use a Swiss Army knife to develop unique positioning so you're more valuable in the marketplace, perceived and real, as well as we're going to pick his brain on like if he were, a younger self. Oh, wait, he has his son working in the business that he could actually give that advice to. We're going to pick his brain on that as well. Perry, welcome to the show. How are you?
It's good to be here. I'm great. It's a beautiful day. And despite all the weirdness and uncertainty in the world, life is good. There's lots to be grateful for. And there's a lot for us to talk about because the world's in a strange place right now.
Absolutely. Speaking of strange places, like why are you doing what you're doing? I mean, you are working with, some very prominent world leaders on curing cancer of all things.
Yes.
And you're at
Yes.
the cutting edge of that in a separate project or focus, yet you still have this affinity to help business owners grow their impact and also get free and get exponential growth. Speak about that a little bit, why you're doing what you're doing.
When I was in college, I remember reading several times. The books didn't come out and say this explicitly, but there were stories of Isaac Newton sitting under trees and apples falling out of the trees and him asking, well, why does that happen? And he's doing experiments, rolling balls down hills. And I connected a dot, and the dot was if that kid wasn't from a rich family, he'd probably be staring at the backside of a mule. But because he had some resources, he could research questions that completely changed the trajectory of the entire world. I mean, how many people can you think of that are more influential than Isaac Newton? And there was a part of me that said, well, dude, you're not from a rich family by any stretch of the imagination, because I wasn't. I was a pastor's kid. But, if you could get to a place in your life where money wasn't such a big deal anymore, you could do stuff like that. And I remember wanting to do that. In my early 20s, I had a few bumps and bruises. I played a little practical joke at my job, which got me fired, which was very shocking. When you're 21 years old and you're calling your brand new father-in-law because you just got married 10 months ago and like, Ron, a really funny thing happened at work today. And his daughter now has an unemployed husband. I had several bumps and bruises that made me realize, dude, if you're just going to punch the clock and work for the man, you're going to have a very limited horizon. And yeah, I know as a pastor's kid, you think engineers make a lot of money, but they really don't. And you better not be staring at the back of a mule
Yeah.
for the rest of your life. And so for several reasons, I got recruited into multi-level marketing. Now, that is about 6 or 7 years of misery that I don't know that we need to get into in any detail. It was a big, long, huge detour, but there was a well-intentioned reason why I decided to expand beyond just the boundaries of my engineering world. And it was because I really wanted to do interesting things. And when I was 20, I knew that if I am 45 and I am like working for the man because I need the health insurance or some stupid reason like that, I am not going to be a happy person. And I am speaking to the person who is somewhere on that continuum. I mean, a lot of the people we're talking to, you're already self-employed, you're already doing your own thing, and you're well on that road. There's probably other people that are early on that road, but my goodness, do not spend the rest of your life staring at the back end of a mule. And
And
and so, yeah, go ahead, please, Dan.
yeah, and I just can't help but wonder. So, as a pastor's kid, Perry, how did that go over when you decided to join a network marketing company in the first place? I'm
Well,
just wondering.
Well, my dad died when I was 17, so he did not weigh in on any of that decision. My mom kind of went along with whatever it was that I was going to do. I grew up in a very tight-knit community, and me going out and doing something like that, it was kind of like, okay, so like you're going to stick your head above like what's that phrase about the tallest poppy syndrome? Like, who do you think you are? I definitely got some of that. But one of the things I really don't like MLM, frankly. I think about 90% of the MLM industry is a scam. But one thing that I have to say is they they put you in a suit and tie. They give you a satchel and a presentation packet, and they send you out and they arm you with the ability to go and defy the odds and do something unusual and dare to be better, more successful than other people, and to commit yourself to personal development. And all of those things are good. And in fact, I don't know how many people I couldn't even count how many people I know who are very, very, very successful marketers. And where did they start out? Cutco knives, Amway, Mary Kay, Girl Scout cookies, being a Mormon missionary, or like all kinds of things like that, where you have to get in front of people, nose to nose. You have to get invited in. You have to sit at somebody's kitchen table, and you've never seen these people before, and you have to become friends with them in 30 minutes and convince them to do something. That is an immensely valuable skill set. And I don't care what you do, it comes in handy over and over and over. And I don't care what profession you're in. The people that have those skills do better than everybody else.
Yeah, it's an amazing platform to cut your teeth. We don't have time to go into it. I was introduced to MLM when I was 17, and I will say it was one of the greatest training platforms I've ever experienced for selling, for marketing, presentate, all the things you just talked about. So fast forward a little bit, Perry, to you have Planet Perry, which we'll get into a little bit later in more detail, but you're on this quest to help companies grow from 1 million to 10 million and get free. And I mean, having met a lot of your members, I mean, you're a legend in this industry, for crying out loud. So what keeps you going? What is it that really continues to drive you to be still doing what you're doing?
I love what happens when you put really, really high quality people in a room or in any situation together. When you have the best of the best people, it's always going to be interesting. It's always going to be fun. It's always going to be competent. And connecting those people to other people is just incredible. I talked about, kind of wanting to be Isaac Newton. Well, in the last 5 or 10 years, I've got heavily involved in science, and I'm deep in cancer research. And what keeps happening over and over and over again is I connect people between one world and another world that would never, ever otherwise meet each other, and amazing things happen. And so the entrepreneurial world that I inhabit, it's still fun, it's still interesting, it still has incredibly talented people, and it keeps being a fuel source for a whole lot of other things that I want to do that I think those are the things that will outlast me. So, for example, we really are on our way to putting a big dent in cancer. I have people who have figured out how to detect cancer at stage -1 when there's literally only a few, maybe a few hundred precancerous cells in their body, and there aren't even any cancer cells yet. And some of those technologies are coming along. And I just want to encourage people that if you have a gut feeling that there's something really important that you need to do in the world, and you need to make sure that you have resources and you have options, do not ignore that impulse. That is the kind of thing that people regret not paying attention to on their deathbed. So, I mean, this can be as much fun as you want to have a conversation about business strategies and all, but there is a heart attack serious mission at the bottom of this, which is to have a meaningful life and to do things that make some kind of contribution to humanity that you can really be proud of. I mean, I think that's what people really want. And yeah, your kids and your spouse and your family is part of your contribution, but so is your career. And if you're going to spend 30, 50, 60 hours a week doing something, man, it better be something meaningful. It better
Yeah.
be something you care about.
Yeah. And speaking of which, one of the things that I have been impressed, I mean, there's so many things to be impressed with you and the work that you do, is the lifestyle piece. It's not just words, right? You're not standing in front of giant boats, although you could, and in front of Rolls Royces and planes and all this BS stuff that a lot of these blowhards in marketing have a tendency to do. Like, you're genuine, you're authentic, you're real, and like I feel like one of the reasons I connect with you, Perry. So, I was a heart attack, and what I mean by that is I built a couple companies. I grew it up to 20 million plus 30 million a year. And then I ultimately exited. But part of the reason I decided to exit is I saw where my health went. I gave my wife at the time, who's now a former wife. I'm now happily married to my best friend and business partner. But that first marriage, I gave her leftovers. That's the truth. And even worse, I gave myself leftovers. I'm a typical type A driver, hard going. I'll sleep when I'm dead, that whole mentality and, all that sort of stuff. And like, when I was introduced to your work, it was like, oh my gosh, I feel like a breath of fresh air, right? Because quietly I was suffering, going, is this really the way? It seems like this is what everybody else is doing. I got to, be a workaholic, which, I have that respectable addiction. I still have it. And I have now just created a lot more healthy boundaries through all
Yeah.
kinds of mechanisms, and several that you teach. Just, I didn't know it even existed, but you have, like, your time management model is such a valuable. If you're watching or listening right now, we'll go
Mm-hmm.
deeper into some of this,
Yeah.
time permitting, but your time management, the 80-20 of time, doing the most productive thing at every given moment, being able to, for me, I ended up in a hospital for 4 days, had a heart procedure because it was essentially burnout and a heart problem. And, I was 85 pounds heavier than I am today. I gave my health leftovers, right? And
Mm.
so I feel like, one of the things, I mean, you live it, you do it. I've met a lot of your members, know a lot of your members. I mean, you help experts and entrepreneurs, CEOs. I mean, companies that are typically 1 to 2 million, and you help them. You've helped several grow over 100 million, and then some. And that is not even public, that we can't publicize,
Right.
right?
Right.
And at the same time, have a high quality of life that you don't have to give. So speak to that. What do you see as a common mistake, Perry, that a lot of people are making right now, especially in these uncertain times, when there can be a tendency to grind harder, work harder, dive in more, versus maybe a different approach that could be healthier and still highly productive?
So I want to draw you a picture on my board here, and I'll describe it for people who are listening. So I'm drawing a quadrant picture on my board with 4 squares. This came from about 10 years ago. I realized that the word work is too broad to be functionally meaningful to being productive and making your career what you want it to be. So any educated Christian knows that the Greek the Bible was written in has three words for love, not one. One is erotic love, one is friendship love, and one is deep unconditional love. And they're three completely different things. And my writing partner, John McGee, and I started talking about this, and we decided we need to split work into four different kinds. And so on the vertical axis, I put productivity, and on the horizontal axis, on the right, I put predictable. So I have productive work, unproductive work, predictable work, unpredictable work. And this gives you a fascinating way of breaking down the activities that you do every day. So the productive and predictable, high productivity, highly predictable, we call this work ethic, as in Protestant work ethic. It's so like if you're a lawyer and you bill $300 an hour, it's billable hours doing clients that you should have, that you can help, not the wrong clients. It's and all that. That's work ethic. On the opposite, unpredictably unproductive, we call that sweet life. And that's you taking a weekend or taking Sunday off or going on vacation or doing your favorite thing. That's what sweet life is. Now, the other two are really interesting. Predictably unproductive is what we call barnacles. What's that? Barnacles is what you do when you don't really know what you do, but you want to trick yourself into thinking that you're productive. So you hit refresh on your email box 136 times a day, or you go check Twitter, or you go get on LinkedIn, or you go, oh, I think there was some YouTube videos that I needed to watch about time management. And then you burn the whole afternoon. And this is called barnacles, and it's usually OCD behavior. And I think most people spend at least half of their working life doing barnacle stuff. Mm-hmm. It may make some money, but it only makes you $10 an hour. It doesn't make you $1,000 an hour. It may be marginally productive, but you either shouldn't be doing it or you should be delegating it. And this is what you steal from when you need more time. There's immense amounts of time available if you stop doing this stuff. Now, then I'm going to use a different color. On the upper left is unpredictably productive. And that's not work. That's not like standard billable hours, regular routine stuff. Unpredictable, I call it Renaissance time.
You said Renaissance time, right?
Renaissance time. Renaissance time is, let me give you a bunch of examples of Renaissance time. It's starting your day not on your phone, not in your email box, doing prayer, meditation, gratitude, reading something inspirational, listening to some music, watching the ducks on the pond, not throwing yourself into instant reactive mode in the morning. That is Renaissance time. Renaissance time is when somebody introduces you to somebody and says, hey, you guys should meet up. I think something interesting would happen if you guys meet each other and you go out to lunch with that person. There's about a 1 out of 10 or 20 chance that that's going to be explosively productive. And there's about a 19 out of 20 chance that it's just going to be a pleasant lunch with somebody. But those kind of, that's networking. That can be enormously productive in a world that's who, not how.
Yep.
Or it could be going to a rock concert. How many people have had, or some inspirational thing, like whatever you're into, how many of you have had the experience of you've been trying to solve this problem for weeks and you were waving your cigarette lighter in the air at the concert and all of a sudden that puzzle piece came sailing out of the sky and landed. That is a formula for productivity. It's just unpredictable and you have to give yourself permission. And workaholics get very, very little of this.
Yeah.
In fact, workaholics are as prone to anybody as to barnacle work because they think, well, gee, as long as I'm working, I'm not a bad guy. And there's some script running from when you're a teenager, or your dad yelling at you, or whatever. And so we made this matrix, and it brought immense clarity to what I'm doing. So you should schedule sweet life. For example, I think working 7 days a week is a false economy. Does not make you more productive. The oldest civilization that is intact in history is the Jewish civilization. And if you pay attention to observant Jewish people, they take a Sabbath. It starts on Friday night. They have a meal with their family, and they don't work, and they don't do technology on Saturday. And that's Sabbath. And that's been going for 4,000 years. And I'm not Jewish, so I can say this. Has anybody noticed that the top 20% of every profession is Jewish people, even though Jewish people are only a tiny sliver of the world's population? Go look at a medical journal, go look at the legal profession, go look at music, go look at entertainment. This works. Take a day off. You schedule sweet life, and you schedule work ethic. Now, my belief is that most people realistically are not going to get in more than about 3 hours a day of honest work ethic time. You are at peak productivity for a few hours a day, and most of us know when that is. For some people, it's the first thing in the morning. For some people, it's the middle of the day. Once in a while, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning for some certain kind of people. But you know what your zone is.
Yep.
You make and if you really care about your work ethic time, you make sure that you're only doing things that really genuinely require insight and resourcefulness and imagination, which means you shouldn't be spending that time answering emails and running errands and putting out fires, because all those things do not require you to be at your best. You could do those kinds of things at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when you're a little tired, and it'll be fine. But if your peak time is 9 o'clock in the morning, then you should make sure that the $1,000 an hour tasks are what you're doing then. In my book, 80/20 Sales and Marketing, I say there's three kinds of work. There's $10 an hour work, which is just doing silly little errands. There's $100 an hour work, which is like having a meaningful conversation with a customer or a client. And then there's $1,000 and $10,000 an hour opportunities, which are negotiation and creative endeavors and very high leverage points in your business. So most people don't realize that they have a few minutes of $10,000 an hour opportunities every day. So let's take a dentist office. The phone rings and Helen picks it up and she says, "Excuse me, can you hold, please?" And she puts them on hold. And 2 minutes later, she picks up the phone and the person's gone. Well, they were going to spend $5,000 on some new crowns, and you just lost the practice $5,000 in 2 minutes. How many dollars an hour is that? Helen only makes $25 an hour, but she's doing $100,000 an hour phone calls multiple times a day for a few minutes a day. Every business has levers like that, which are being ignored. So let me catch my breath, and tell me how this is landing.
So as you're watching or listening right now, what would it be worth for you to get control of the controllables? And what better to be having control of controllables than your time, and scheduling in the sweet life, scheduling in your work ethic, scheduling in, what Perry called the Renaissance time, that creative genius, and being able to tap into potentially the infinite universe to help support you
Mm-hmm.
through that Renaissance time,
Mm-hmm.
and do it on purpose, not by accident, not by default, not because you heard some speaker from 100 years ago who's still teaching and following practices that say the way to build success is to work your ass off. But do the right thing. As important as doing things right, efficient and effective. And I know on page 119 in your book, you have a chart literally that gives you the ability, and we'll talk about the book in a little bit, Perry, but imagine having a simple exercise where you could sit down and identify your potentially the $10 an hour work that it might be draining you. It's not an energy charger for you, it's an energy drainer deep down.
Yeah. It's
Right?
OCD.
And get clear on it. And then ultimately be able to decide that renaissance time, that creative time, that work ethic time, that's the 10,000 hour work that matters, that is
Yeah.
meaningful, that you want to do. It charges you up. You want to, you want to do. So if that intrigues you, make sure to stick around. We're going to explain to you how to get access to not only this, but a lot of Perry's different work that he makes available. I mean, he's got an arsenal of tools that can help you and I and all of us. So Perry, with that, like, what do so we've covered some of the big mistakes, control the controllables, time focused on wrong things, why you're doing what you're doing. What do you like right now in these times of uncertainty, right? And markets go through all kinds of ups and downs, and this is like a weird cycle we've gone through. Or
Yes.
maybe another way to say it is that we haven't gone through, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
Because it seems to have skipped a little bit. I get the feeling what I'm talking about. So if you're watching or listening, you may not understand. That's okay. But in these uncertain times, like what would you say, would be a couple strategies related to 80/20, getting clients, marketing and selling beyond what you've already shared, which is already a wealth of wisdom. What would you say would be a couple strategies someone could get in place to help, protect their business as well as help give them potentially a surge of new momentum and
So
confidence?
I'd like to draw a little picture. This is a little advanced 80/20, and this is one of the most powerful things that you can have in a turbulent economy, especially when there's down cycles. The funny thing about where we're at right now is some people are up and other people are down, and it's almost like there's no rhyme or reason. But I do know this, a lot of small businesses are getting squeezed. That's
Yep.
for sure. So I call this the 21-20 rule. And here's what it says. It says, so this is the top 20% of your business up here, and this is the bottom 20%, and then there's this middle 60. It says the best 20% of your business, meaning your best customers, your best clients, the best parts of your product line, generate 120% of your profit. Not 100, 120. And then the worst products in your product line, the worst customers, the worst processes in your business lose 20%, and they bring you down to the 100 that you actually made. And all you have to do to be profitable is stop doing 20% of what you're doing. What it says is that you're taping some product you sell, you're taping dollar bills to every box that goes out the door. Some client that you service, every time you send them an invoice, you spent more money servicing that client than you actually made. And most of the time, people don't know it, or they only sort of know it, or they only sort of suspect. They've never run the numbers. And here's what I've noticed about really high performance entrepreneurs. So let me take you back 4 years to, we were in COVID 4 years ago, right?
Yep.
So March of 2020 hits, and I had several coaching groups, and I was just like anybody else, like, I don't know what to tell all these people. I've never lived through a pandemic. All I know how to do is get on the Zoom calls and just start applying 80/20 and work through it. And there were my highest level coaching group. Most of those people, we told them, you need to cut staff. You need to cut expenses. You can't afford to be optimistic about how long this pandemic's going to last. I know we'd like it to go away in 6 weeks, but we don't know that it's going to do that. And the very best clients reacted immediately, many of them within days. And most of those clients within 3 or 4 months were more profitable than they'd ever been before. And then I watched other clients, and they were typically, not always, but they were typically lower paying clients in lower level coaching groups who were a little less decisive, and they're still getting drugged through the water. It was like You ever gone water skiing and not let go of the tow rope?
Oh, yeah. I'm
First time I
picturing
went
my
water
friend George on in Michigan, St. Clair Shore. He literally held on for what seemed like 5 minutes, just getting killed.
I did that I was 9 years old. The first time I went water skiing, I didn't know to let go of the tow rope until I suddenly realized, you know, you don't have to hold on to that thing. And then the boat came around and picked me up. I'm like, oh, okay. He's not going to turn around and stop until I let go of that thing. Well, the ones that acted quickly were the ones with the healthiest businesses. And in fact, one of those businesses, I'll tell you who it was and what he does. The hardest hit business in that coaching group was a guy named Brady Roberts with a company called iCapture. And they had lead generation software for trade shows. Well, what's the worst business you could possibly be in a pandemic?
Trade shows, like
He had, oh,
events.
it was worse than rock concerts because
Yeah.
at least rock concerts could be outside.
Yep.
Nobody has a trade show outside. So Brady cut his staff from 25 down to 8. We squeaked through the pandemic. And about 6 months ago, he sold his company for 8 figures. I mean, he had one of those exits with life-changing money.
That's amazing.
And look, going from 25 down to 8 was very painful. Mostly it was psychologically painful. But if you don't let go of those people, then it's just going to drain your bank account. Josh Long, my partner who helps teach that group, he had a friend who he sold a company, made a couple $100 million, and then he started another company and he spent every bit of his $100 million employing people that he thought he was morally or ethically obligated to keep on board as he drove a company in the ground that didn't need that many people. And he just had some neurotic idea that it was his responsible to take care of all those people. Now, anybody that knows me knows I've got employees who've been on for 20 years. I'm a very loyal person. I'm not suggesting some kind of a slash and burn approach to business. I don't run that way. But the fact is being in business requires making hard decisions that are emotionally difficult, and you have to do what makes sense for the business. And I'll just add this in. I've done this myself, a lot of situations where you really should have got rid of somebody a year ago because they're just not performing really well. And every time I fired somebody because they just weren't doing very well anymore, they all knew it was coming. And frankly, they thought it should have happened 6 months ago. And they've been terrified that it was going to happen for 6 months. And they didn't have the guts to just go get a different job. I can't think of anybody I've fired who ended up on the street because, they were homeless or no, they find other stuff. There's better jobs that they could have. There's better situations for them. Sometimes people just get burned out on a certain kind of a job or they don't want to do it anymore. And we hold on to the way that things used to be or the way we thought things used to be. And you just can't do that.
And speaking of that, I mean, there's so much. I feel like we're getting a master class here more than even an interview. So thank you. I mean, you bring it every time I've seen you. You show up very similar, and I know you channel a lot of this. That's another topic another day too. But again, fascinating. So we're in this situation. I'm going to speak to the elephant in the room as someone might be watching or listening right now, going, okay, that's great about then. What about now? Like if you were to give guidance, if we were with you, which we are, right here, right now, what kind of potential shifts do you think someone could be looking to make either similarly to then or other new things that they need to be looking at to make those kind of shifts too?
Well, let's just call out the elephant in the room. It's an election year.
Yep.
And here's something that's always true in election years. The economy is always volatile in an election year. Advertising is more expensive.
Yep.
Attention spans are down. Available attention goes down because everybody's paying attention to politics. And to really call out the elephant in the room, a couple months ago, when they had that debate between Trump and Biden. So here's what it was like for me. I don't watch a lot of TV and I don't pay a lot of attention to the news, but I actually watched it. I laughed my ass off for an hour. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. It was funnier than anything that Saturday Night Live could ever write. It was kooky, it was nutty. And then the next day, I had some time to think about it. I read some commentary about it. I got on Twitter. And by the end of the day, I was livid. I cannot believe that these are the best candidates these people could put in front of us. I am
That's right.
appalled. I'm aghast that things have come to this. I was just mortified. And then I had to give my head a shake. I doubt a whole lot of people are going to disagree with what I just said. I think this is a fairly not controversial set of statements that I'm making. But I came to a realization, dude, if you keep watching YouTube and Twitter, you're just going to piss away all your energy and get angry and get distracted about something you can't do anything about.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying nobody can do anything about it. There are people who are part of the political system or activists or whatever like that. And if that's your role in the world, then go do your job. But if that is not your role, which it's probably not, all you can do is vote and stay in your lane. And you better stay in your lane. And listen, we are in a serious vacuum of leadership right now. This is one of the reasons that things are so weird and that people are so weird and that social media is so weird, is that there's a absence of the kind of leadership that humans need. So let me give you an example of leadership. I remember I was 11 years old the day Ronald Reagan got sworn in. And I vividly remember as an 11-year-old that within 24 hours, the Iranian government had released the hostages because they knew they couldn't mess with Reagan. Carter was a nice guy with a sweater, and they knew that they could horse around with him, but they couldn't horse around with Reagan. And within 8 years, Reagan had also broken the back of the Soviet Union. Now, I'm not giving you a big hurrah for Ronald Reagan. That's not really the point. But here is the point. He was a strong leader, and he knew what he was trying to do, and people knew that he was determined to do certain things, and they knew they had to take him seriously, whether they agreed with him or not. That's what I mean by strong leader.
Yep.
When Brady laid off 17 of his employees, they didn't have to like it, but he knew where he was going. Here's my point. You better know where you're going. And you better not wait for the US presidency to sort itself out for you to figure out what you're doing and where you're going. And if you don't figure out who you are and what you're going to do, nobody else will. And if you figured out who you are and what you're going to do, people will follow you because they desperately need that. I hear a lot of people complaining, oh, Gen Z and Gen Y don't have any work ethic. They have work ethic if they believe in the person they're following.
Yep.
They want what you're seeing is people responding to a lack of backbone, a lack of conviction, a lack of leadership, and a lack of good options. And so I said to myself, I am not going to spend my time on Twitter. I'm not going to spend my time on YouTube. I'm curing cancer. I've got business leaders. I've got people who read my emails and watch my videos and read my newsletters. And my job is to do that really well. And that is job one. And I am not going to get distracted by my level of disgust with a bunch of other people that I don't have any control of.
And as you're watching or listening right now, again, Harry brings up absence of leadership. Well, what would happen if you flipped the script and you developed your version of your 80-20 leadership skills, marketing skills, sales skills, to know where you're going, know who you are, know where you're going? What would it do for you? What would it give you? It'd probably give you a lot of peace of mind to really tune in, to stay in your lane, to not be distracted by the number one enemy you and I face right here, right now. And it may just get worse before it gets better. So why not focus on your lane? So Perry, I know we've covered so much in such a short, and I'd love to carry this out of respect for the time as well. If people want to get more info, learn about your resources, the tools, things you've got available, where can they go to learn more?
My book, 80-20 Sales and Marketing, will totally change your life. It'll change the way you understand business. It'll change the way you do business. It will show you where the hidden levers are. There's all kinds of tiny little hinges that swing big doors. You can get 80/20 sales and marketing for $7 in the US at sell8020.com, SELL8020.com. And it's 14 outside of the US. It's a bargain. You can buy it on Amazon for 18, but we sell it for 7 on that site, and we give a couple of bonus videos that you won't get if you buy it from Amazon. And it will completely change your life. Again, it's sell8020.com.
So if you're looking for a little hinge that can swing a big door, and you're looking for lots of little hinges, then I encourage you to go get Perry's book right now. Go to sell8020.com. That's sell8020.com and dive in. Again, we're just giving you, this is just a glimpse into the way Perry views the world, his worldview, but also it can be very meaningful to your business world and how you go about growing your business from 1 million to 10 million, and maybe have a bigger impact, a bigger reach, make a bigger contribution and difference in the world, and also take advantage of the network effect that Perry has set up in Planet Perry. Now, for sake of time, Perry, I have a couple just weird questions to ask before we wrap up. You have a son that works for you. I believe his name's Kyler. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So like as Kyler is working with you, right? And you're carrying forward. I mean, you're in amazing health yourself at your age, which, if you're listening right now, you can't see it, but if you are watching it, you go, wow, I would have never guessed he's 142. No, I'm just kidding. In his late 40s, late 30s. And I'm kidding on that side too. But for your son, Kyler, what are you hoping to teach Kyler in working with you side by side in the business? And, he does, I believe, a great job as far as, relationship management, follow up, some sales, different things like that he's a part of in your business.
Tyler is 24. And when he got out of high school, I said, do not go to college. You'll learn a lot more working for me. Just come and work for me. And we'll teach you how to sell. We'll teach you the business. I'll take you to my meetings and you'll meet all kinds of interesting people. 2 weeks later, we were sitting at lunch with the former prime minister of Ethiopia, who was telling the story of getting arrested and sent to prison for 12 years for not being a Marxist anymore. And I said, Kyler, most universities would not have allowed you to hear that conversation. And so one of my beliefs about kids, I have 6 kids. I have 4 standard issue, 2 adopted, and every one of them is ridiculously different from all the others. And here's what I believe about teaching kids. You don't try to make your kids well-rounded. What you do is you do want to make sure they have reading, writing, and arithmetic down. That's important. But beyond that, you figure out what they're passionate about, and you just pour gas in the fire about whatever that is. So with Kyler, we homeschooled our kids. Kyler was interested in improv, bass guitar, and talking, which you could call oratory if you wish. That would be the genteel word for it. But he likes to talk. And so we got him a vocal coach, and we put him in improv classes, and we gave him a bass guitar or 2. And here's what I believe, that if a kid learns everything about something, they will learn something about everything. I have another kid named Xander who is really into piano and violin, and he's a piano and violin fanatic. We have never had to tell him to practice. We didn't wake up one day and say, Xander, we want you in Suzuki lessons. Xander woke up one day and he goes, I like violin. And so he picked up the violin. Now, he tried lots of things, but that thing stuck. And so I take him to the symphony, and we buy him symphony tickets, and we buy him music lessons, and he works at a recording studio. Now he teaches violin lessons and he teaches piano lessons. We never had to make our kids do these things. They did them naturally. You cannot imagine how much more organic and fresh and happy and attentive kids are when you're not making them do everything. And it's way easier on you. And so I didn't tell all my kids to come and work for me, but Kyler could sell. Kyler can speak. Kyler can give a speech. This is a good business for Kyler to be in. And so, Dan, is that kind of the flavor that you were looking for with
That's amazing. And as you're watching or listening right now, one tendency might be, well, hey, will you adopt me, Perry? Chances are he's not looking to have any more, but maybe I'll let you work that out with him. What I will say, if you're looking for a way to develop better leadership, to have a greater worldview, to follow somebody who's leading by example, demonstrating leadership at home. I mean, let's face it, there's so many experts that are false experts, pseudo experts. They show up one way on stage. And one thing I appreciate about you, Perry, is your front stage and your backstage is consistent. And it shows up at home and it shows up in business, the way you do business. I mean, the way you do anything is the way you do everything, as that old adage goes. So if you're looking for someone to help you grow your business from 1 million to 10 million, if you're looking for a way to look at new ways to apply 80-20 in your business, time-wise, leadership-wise, marketing, sales, and a whole lot more, that I encourage you, go to sell8020.com. That's sell8020.com. And by all means, get the little hinge or hinges that Perry's been talking about this entire conversation. So Perry, this has been a lot of fun. What do you hope someone is watching or listening? What are the action steps you hope someone would take from our conversation and interview today?
So do this, buy the book for $7. That means we're taping dollar bills to the book to get it in your hand.
Yes.
We buy it from the publisher. Buy the book and pay your kid $25 to read the book. Say, Johnny, I'll pay you $25 to read this book and answer, and then let's go out to lunch and tell me about it. That book will change your kids' outlook on everything. They will talk about 80-20 for the rest of their life. They will see 80-20s that they never saw before. And oh, by the way, yeah, you should read it too.
Absolutely. And by the way, it doesn't stop with 80-20, especially if you're a creative entrepreneur, because what's 80-20 of 80-20? It's 464. What's 80-20 of that? It's 151.
Yes.
How great would it be to find that 1% of things that you are meant to do, called to do, supposed to do, and it produced 51% of your results? Perry can show you how. Get the book. Go get the book right now at sell8020.com. That's sell8020.com. Perry, it's great to be with you, my friend, and a pleasure.
Thank you, Dan. Great interview. It's an honor to be interviewed by you today. Thank you.
Absolutely.